This is the Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Kelly Majdan for the first time. Welcome to the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. This is fun. I always enjoy. They're always fun when whatever happens live.
Yeah, we've been a live podcaster since 2016. As you can see, we're featured podcast on a platform called Newsly. And if people use coupon code GHOST, they can get 1 month free premium subscription on that if they do that today. This podcast is again featured on there and will be on there later tonight. It's only an audio version of the podcast. We're on multiple platforms. So your audience will be able to listen to or watch us on a landing page after the podcast. We'll send you the landing page and people can just choose which platform they want to watch or listen to this on. But also those who are just listening, I do have their website, www.kellymagin.com and then /book-2-0. That will be fully clickable when we publish on the platform. So if people click on that, what do they see when they go to your URL?
So that goes directly to some information regarding the book, Lessons from the Obstacle Course, 5 Strategies to Conquer the Muddy Fields of Life. And towards the bottom, there'll be a couple links where you can go out to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and purchase a book. And then a little bit further down, there's a guidebook, a free guidebook workbook that goes with it. And you can download that as well, too, because I structured the book with lots of questions to help you work through your obstacles.
So your book, Lessons from the Obstacle Course, is 5 Strategies to Conquer the Muddy Fields of Life. How long has that book been out?
Just since March of this year. So end of March is when we finally got this baby off the ground.
And you're a national board certified health and wellness coach. And then you help people with a life of wellness and longevity and financial security. And so the book, maybe you want to talk about maybe the 5 strategies, or maybe you want to step back and talk about like how you came to write a book and get into the whole, you're a speaker, you're an author, you're a wellness advisor, maybe kind of give people the backdrop of your experience.
Sure. I guess we'll do that. We'll do the background a little bit. That might help see where this all came from, right? So when back in early to about 2014, we discovered that my husband had something called a pineal gland cystic mass sitting in the middle of his brain. And that led him to have brain surgery. And from there, we've always been very active and working through, did a lot of like 5Ks and even done one marathon, check the box, I'm good, done. I'm going to do that again. But anyway, while he was recovering from his brain surgery, I had a few friends who invited me. They're like, hey, Kelly, come do this thing called the Warrior Dash. And it kind of sounded like fun. So I'm like, yeah, let's just jump in and do it. Then I took a step back and went, what's a Warrior Dash? Like, what is this thing I just signed up for? I'm like, you ever do that where you just kind of jump in 2 feet? Like, yeah, let's do it. And then like, wait a minute, what the heck did I just jump in for?
Yeah, what did I sign up for?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, it was this muddy, very muddy. They conveniently left out the amount of mud in this obstacle course, but it was about like 3+ miles and lots of obstacles, lots of mud, but a really fun time. And as my husband was, he couldn't obviously participate because it was like he had surgery in March and this happened to be in like May. So he was still recovering. And we had 2 little kids. Our kids were little at that time, about like 7 and 9, but they all watched, and that just like planted the seed in him to say, okay, I'm going to push through this recovery, because we had a few issues. He had to go back into the hospital for brain swelling, and then he had blood clots that he had to deal with in his legs, and then he also dislocated his hip doing yoga. But that's what happens when a Marine does yoga. Just, hey, a little bit more. Anyway, so that's that. We found an obstacle course challenge that was out in September of 15, and so just enough time to get him to recover. But that was the thing. That was his little carrot he needed out there in order to push through all the recovery and all the setbacks that we had, because my lower back went out on me, found out I had degenerating discs, all the fun stuff that happens to you in your early 40s when all of a sudden your body starts to say, hey, you've used me quite a bit here. Going to start not working quite well here. So I tell this story because that's really what the first strategy in the Lessons from the Obstacle course is recovery. It's setting up, finding that thing, that objective that you want to hit that will encourage you and push you to move forward, to recover from whatever it is, whether it is a physical setback or a mental setback or a combination of the two, or just a general life setback. Is finding whatever that obstacle is, or that objective is that you want to fight for, and that will encourage you to basically get out of bed and do the stuff that you need to do. So recovery is the first strategy. The next is discovery, persistency, creativity, and collaboration. So how I got to that point was really just since then, since the 2015 race, we've done probably over 15. We have one coming up, and we did one 2 weekends ago. We have one coming up in 2 weekends, and then we have a Spartan trifecta coming up in the end of September. So we're still going at it, and we're both over 50. So it's fun.
That's interesting. You found a good way to, be physically, active, and I think a lot of things. I'm a mountain biker. I don't do
That,
what you're doing, but I like to mountain bike just because I'm a musician, and a lot of us musicians, producers, like I'm sit here in my bedroom studio, and I get caught up writing, and then I'm indoors writing. I'm using a
right.
different part of my brain to do that, but you need to get out, and sometimes it's good to walk away from something you're working on. And they said, when a poet said, nature is the cathedral. I think it's like Longfellow or Hawthorne. And if you go out in the woods, like I live in New Hampshire, we have tons of trail systems, and just
Oh,
I just
yeah.
like being able to. I just like the feeling, and like when you're doing these events, it's kind of like I don't like going to a gym. I like being able to go in the woods and do a trail, and go up the mountain, go down the mountain, go down the creek bed, whatever. It just feels like to me that's feels. I don't know. I just don't like being in a in a gym kind of situation. That's not for me. But
Oh,
just how I found a way to get to peace. Is actually outside.
oh, I absolutely agree with you. And there's something a lot to that, really. It's nature. They say seeing green is really, really helpful for your brain and for just resetting your nervous system. And of course, getting out there, breathing the fresh air. And then of course, it's also something that you like. So add all that together, and it's a great thing to get out. Now, mountain biking scares me. I would much rather be out there trail running. I'll take trail running. You take the mountain biking. We're good. So you mountain bikers are awesome because you clear the
Yeah.
cobwebs for us trail runners.
Yeah, I just like I don't know. I just got into this idea that you can do something you wouldn't think you could go down a creek bed. You didn't think you could go over a stump. You didn't think you could. Now we have the bike that can do it. And I'm in 56 years old. I started before people wore helmets and people wore gear and people had suspensions. And I was doing it back in the 70s and getting banged up. But it's like now we've got suspensions. Our bikes are kind of like little mini motorcycles, but without engines. But
Oh
it's a
yeah.
certain skill set to be able to not have the fear of being able to go like 30 miles an hour down a creek and not be scared and think that you actually have to have a little bit more speed than you would think. Like if you slow down, that's when you get kicked off.
It absolutely is. You really do have to go for it. You have to commit. Like if you're going to do it, you've got to commit. Because and that's where I get in trouble is like, I'm afraid to commit in that respect. I can commit to other things, but the mountain
Yeah, if
biking,
you're
no,
afraid to
I'm sorry. You
commit,
go right ahead.
you can go right over the bars if you don't commit. But
Yeah.
it's kind of like it kind of it gets you into this frame of mind. So what I like about it is I can't think about my job. I can't think about other things. I can
Hmm.
only think about like trying to survive on the bike and not getting thrown off and be able to do it. And so that requires me to be in nature, but kind of concentrate on the act of being able to be on this bike and do this kind of crazy thing. It's like, well, how could you do that? But you don't think about it other than you have skill sets that you built up and you build that skill set up and you kind of feel good about yourself if you're able to accomplish it. I would think when you go through those obstacles you go through these trials that you're talking about, being able to make it through, and maybe you didn't know if you could, but like, you keep on doing them because you find in that, well, hey, I can do this, So I think that's a cool kind of conquer the muddy fields of life. I think it's the same kind of idea with conquering the trail.
It absolutely is, and you touched on something really big there, is the fact that it's that focus, and it's the focus that puts everything else out, and it's also conquering that fear part of you and that questioning, "Oh, can I do this?" And when you focus and commit, then there's really nothing that can stop you except for you.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, like when people find whatever they need to conquer whatever their muddy field of life is. Like I came out of I was a cancer survivor. When I was 27, I had a level 3 sarcoma.
Oh,
And
wow.
part of me, getting back in shape was I built a frame while I was going under radiation and surgeries. I was a mountain biker before, but I said, you know what? I'm gonna buy the frame I always wanted, and I'm gonna, as I was going through my recovery, I would buy components and put it together. And by the time I was done with all my treatments, I was hit the trail, and I wasn't where I was after all these surgeries and stuff. I had been on my, away from it. And,
Right.
I kind of went by myself. And, the first mile I was, well, not anywhere near what I was. And so, I just kept on building up until I finally could do like 15 miles. And then I called my buddies up and I was actually, riding with them. But they didn't see me struggle to get back to where I needed to be. But I went out there and got to where I needed to be so I could go back into it. And it just felt like, giving myself that goal, because I had something that was on my back, and people were saying they didn't know if I could even walk and do stuff again.
Oh,
So to be
wow.
able to kind of come back to that, that was my goal, and I hit it. And I think you got to give yourself something like that when you're going through something traumatic.
Absolutely, and you're right. I mean, and that is exactly, and that was a beautiful goal because it was something you had already been doing before, and it was something that was obviously still a passion of yours. And what a neat way to be able to use the components of building the bike. Not only did it kind of give you that objective that, okay, I'm going to get back out on the field, I'm going to get back out on the trail, but you were also using that time to build that bike that you always wanted. And that's a great way that you work through your recovery.
Yeah, because I just felt like I'm gonna do it. Like my parents were like, "You shouldn't hit the trail anymore. You just had something on your back." They were
Yeah.
trying to kind of tell me not to go back to doing that.
Mm,
Don't go out hiking. Don't go do it. Everybody was telling me like, and they loved me. They didn't want me to get hurt. But it's like,
right.
I for myself, I needed to get back to where I wanted to be. And whether other people thought that was the right thing or not, I had to choose what was right for me.
Well, and that's a big thing. I think we do this. I know we do this as parents, and we do, we want the best for the kids, and your friends want the best for you. It's hard not to be like, are you sure? And especially when they have their own fear of doing it. I'm sure they were probably not out there mountain biking, so I'm sure it scared them as well too. And then just to see, you going through that, they're like, "Are you sure you want to do that, honey?" I love that
Yeah.
you still push through it and say, "Nope, yep, I definitely want to."
Well, I think it's important, to have a guide when you don't know what you need to do. Like when you have these obstacles. And the one thing is like I think post cancer, I'd started to realize I had put, before cancer, I was mountain biking, but I'm a musician, but I wasn't singing. I wasn't podcasting. I wasn't putting myself in the front. I'm a keyboardist. So I was in bands. I was always like the keyboardist. I wasn't singing. I was a part of the band, and sometimes I was writing the songs, but there were singers. I would write the
Ah,
songs for the singer. I wasn't in front. But post cancer, I started to say, if I'm going to do something, I actually need to actually write my own song, sing my own song, like do podcasting or do these things. And that would pre-cancer, I was not that person. But what I found is like if I
mm,
could beat that, I started to push into things. I traveled. I lived in Japan for 2 years. Stuff I didn't wasn't going to do. And it was weird. I had to have a cancer happen to make me do that. And you don't want to have to go through something like that to go and change your life. But it did really change who I am today compared to who I was before that.
well, I think you see that a lot with folks, and that's kind of like overcoming those big obstacles and challenges that you have in life. it really does propel you to, it hits two ways. It either you really do succumb to them and you do shrink back, or it gives you the perspective that you just had was, hey, this is the only life we've got. It's the only life I've got. I want to do these things. And it's that living with no regrets type of mentality that helps push people forward to do the things that were scary to begin with. And I'm sure you've had a lot of fear going through it. It's not that you go on and you have no fear. It's that you still have fear, but you go on despite the fear, and and sometimes that fear helps propel you through that obstacle that you're going through.
Yeah, I think as a creative person, what I find is like the fear is what drives you to do something different. If you're a musician, like you can just stay doing what you're comfortable with. But in order to progress, you have to try genres that you aren't comfortable with. If you're doing bebop, jump into fusion. If you were doing, classical, you want to try some jazz, and the different forms aren't maybe your forte. And so you sometimes people would rather stay in the niche that they know. But I find as an artist, and in life, like if you push yourself into the thing that you're kind of scared of, then you actually grow bit more. Like in terms of just challenging yourself and not just doing the status quo, that you kind of start to question, like, why can't I do that? And why shouldn't I do that? Like, well, I am going to do it.
And you get over that wall that holds you back, and you just start, and then you realize it's not as difficult as you thought it was to begin with. It's usually that first wall and the fear that holds you back from starting it off. But once you get going on it, you may even find you like it. Or you may say like, okay, I've tried that, I'm good. Now let's move on to something else. But that gives you that confidence to continue moving on to that next thing by continuing to overcome.
Well, what made you want to leap from like financial services to wellness, which it seems like very different?
They are, but
Like,
there's a lot of similarities in some respect, and it's kind of the same thing. I had this um, when my husband was recovering. We were going through trying to get ourselves back into shape as it is, and we were hitting that mid 40s time frame of our life with young kids and working really hard. And unfortunately, I had just lost a really good friend of mine, and I just sat on our way back from her funeral. I was like, I wasn't happy in my corporate life. So I had an opportunity to go out on my own for my own registered investment advisor group, which is what I did. And I left this big, cushy corporate job to do that. But I work with a lot of corporate 401k plans, or I did. And what I noticed when I was working with employees and doing financial education and coaching with them, there are two things that negatively or can negatively impact your future years or retirement years, whatever way you want to look at it. One is your health, and the other is your wealth. So a combination of the two. Now, if you have more money, then you can deal with being unhealthy because medical and all of those expenses that come up. But 9 times out of 10, most people do not have enough money to be able to cover the expenses that they're going to have with their health. If you're healthier and maybe not have enough money, then you can find a way to get through your retirement years. And plus, also, if you're healthy and have money, it's a best of both worlds. And you can really truly live your retirement years, like enjoy the things you want to do
mhm.
without having to go to the doctor and pain and all the stuff that happens with a lot of people when you neglect your health. So I kept trying to figure out, how do I merge these two together, finance and health? So back in 2019, I discovered the fact that there is this thing called a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach. So I went back through everything and went, okay, I'm going to go for this, which turned out to be like almost a 2-year process. I had to go back to school to get I have an ADAPT certified functional health coaching certification, and then had to sit for the boards in order to get the National Board Health and Wellness certification. But in the process, I realized, what's missing on the wellness side is the way to plan. Is to really, a lot of
Mhm.
people, when you meet people there who are wellness or wellness coaches or consultants or whatever, you see there's so many wellness products out there to choose from. Like there's not necessarily a need for another product. We got a whole bunch of really great ones out there. but I couldn't find anyone that just did straight planning, like literally trying to
Mm,
pull the pieces together and figure out what is it that you really want to do? What do you want to see in your future? How do you want to see that? How do you want to do it? How do we fit it into your life today? So I decided that I would leave the financial services industry and move completely into the wellness industry as a wellness advisor. So I'm not selling any, like I always say, a shake to make, a pill to pop, or a program that you may or may not follow.
mhm,
But it really
right.
just help you with the whole strategic planning process of really
Plan.
diving into your life. Yeah. So
So you
I
took the planning sorry,
no, go ahead.
but
Go
you
ahead.
take the planning from a financial services. Yeah, you took the planning aspects of that career and you found a way to integrate it where you saw there was a lack of that in other people's programs, so you could take that expertise and apply it to a different area.
Absolutely. And that's the one thing that I call it putting a cap on your expenses. So be clear about what you want to do, bring awareness to what you're currently doing, and then make a plan to bridge the gap. But what is really kind of interesting, do you know, and this is fascinating to me because, of course, being on the financial services side, I'm still a money person. It's the whole wellness industry is going to be over in a $7 billion, no, trillion, excuse me, $7 trillion industry by the year 2025. So
Hmm.
just the obesity market is going to be, I think they said, over 700 billion, because of products and services. So where are they going to get the money from? They're going to get the money from all of us out there using products, right? And they say on average, the average American spends almost about 4,500 to 5,000 on extra wellness products every year, and that's not just going to the doctor. So
Hmm.
when we live in this inflationary environment and we live in a world that it's just going to be, I mean, everywhere you turn, there's a wellness product that's being sold. And a lot of them are great, but how do you know which one is really going to be the one that, one, is going to work for you, but two, and most importantly, you're going to stick with it long enough to
Yeah,
make it work for you? Because that's usually the key. It's not that the
it's
product's
more of it.
bad, it's usually we don't have commitment.
Yeah, it's like a fad. People go from one thing to the next, and if it doesn't give them like immediate result, everybody's looking for like the
Uh-huh.
magic pill. So a
Yeah,
lot of times it's like it's really there's no real magic pill I've ever seen. It's like it's I'm a very holistic type of person.
yeah,
So like usually there's not this one thing that's going to solve something. Usually like the heart, mind, body, soul, spirit. It's like the whole thing. So if you're
right,
doing like one thing, that's probably not it. Because if there's something missing maybe in your psychology or your emotional health. So if you don't have that right or you don't have your physical health right, if you don't have your mindset right, then things won't work. And so that's why I think a lot of people miss the boat is like it's got to be, planning is probably a better idea to like kind of get a holistic picture of like what are your goals, what are you trying to do, have you done a good assessment of the options. I'm a designer, I'm a software designer, so before
yeah,
we
okay,
do
yeah,
anything we whiteboard it out, and we have to figure out how we're gonna plan it, what the timeline is, what are our objectives, what are the use cases, what are the downstreams, whatever. We think everything out, we work with a lot of plans, to
right.
figure it out. And I try to apply that even when I'm a songwriter, you know, as an artist, is like I start with the bass line, go to the drum line and keyboard line, and like, well, what's it going to be? Is it going to be 5 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever? You figure something out, parameters of what you're going to work on.
Exactly. It's the same thing. I mean, it's the same thing with anything in your life, is that if you have to have that objective, you know where you're going to go with it, but then you backpedal back to the back and be like, okay, what steps do we need to get there? And then, as we call it in the financial services industry, as a fiduciary advisor, you find the best fit. So it's that best product that is going to fit that specific need that you have. But first, you have to figure out what is that need that you have and how that's going to fit
Mm,
into your life. And again, what are you going to stick with? And if you do that work first, and then you go and find the product or the service or whatever it is that you need or you identified as your need as your part of your 90-day goal to work towards, then your chances of success are so much better. And the whole point about health, as you've probably found out coming from your cancer journey, is that it's a journey. It's like you don't just get to a certain spot and be like, okay, I've lost the weight, I'm done, because you're not. or it's an ongoing process.
It's
And
ongoing. It's
yeah,
continual. Yeah, you just stop. You
exactly.
don't just stop. And if you stop, you're
Yeah.
probably gonna end up like if you're trying to lose weight and then you stop doing everything you're doing, you're probably gonna get all the way back. Like if you go,
And yeah.
that's what seems to happen.
Well, and most people do it, yo-yo dieting, right? And it's the same thing with physical activity. It's the same thing with your stress management. It's all of those, all of we kind of it's trying and it's working with people to create those just natural habits that they have in their life. So their life becomes their health journey instead of just, oh, I've just got one goal, I'm going to lose weight, or I'm just going to eat well for now, or manage my stress for now. It's really trying to integrate it like we do financial planning. We've always tried to integrate those healthier financial habits. Well, it's the same thing. Let's integrate those healthier wellness habits and do that through a strategic planning in that respect.
Yeah, 'cause it has to be consistent. Like as a
Yeah.
musician, like if you don't practice, like even though I'm 56 years old, I practice. Like, like is this part of the nature of like being a musician? If you want to be like where you are, up on what you're doing, you go through exercise. There's certain exercises we do, just like athletes do exercises.
Oh yeah.
We have
Yep.
to do to stay like at a certain level. And it's like you could like drop off. And if you drop off, you have to do all this work to come back. And I'm kind of the person like I'd rather just be consistent. And I know some musicians they'll just drop for like 2 years and then have to come back. They have to get back everything they lost
Hmm.
because they kind of just stopped. And I'm like, well, I was never into really doing it that way. I'd rather be just consistent and not lose it. It's just a
That's so.
mindset. Some people have more compartmentalized or say, well, I'll be this for now and then stop and then start it again. And I think it's like if you can have that kind of flow of being consistent, you can put it into your lifestyle that is something you like to do. Then maybe if you don't like to do it, you'd think, why are you doing it if you don't like to do it?
You know what? And that's a huge, huge key. Like I talk with people about, and I touch on this in the book, and I've also talked with people with when they go through our program, is not only identifying what you like, but also what's important are two other things: identifying what you don't like to do. Like a lot of people will get into things and they'll maybe try a local fad gym, or they'll try a local program, or they'll just like I give the example, and it's so funny that you mountain bike, because I give this example because my husband and I tried mountain biking. He did well. I told you I did not. I was petrified the entire time I was out there on my bike. But the biggest thing is I love to trail run. So every time I was out on the bike, and I love, like you, I love being out there in nature. I grew up in the foothills of Colorado. So it's just like that's just
Mhm.
home to me. So anytime I can get out in the mountains or get out on the trail, I'm just in my happy place. And I agree, everything else kind of falls away because you're concentrating on where you're putting your feet and all that stuff. But I tell people, like, there's a really big thing. I tried mountain biking. You got to try it just to make sure. To try that thing that scares you, or try the thing you're, I don't know about, and then put it into a category of, okay, do I want to do this or do I not want to do this? And if you can, it's like learning to say no. Okay, no. Anyone ask me to go mountain biking? You ask me to go mountain biking? I'm like, love you to death, but no, it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. But really getting clear about what you really like to do makes it a lot easier to stick to whatever plan it is you want to make or you need to make in order to integrate it. Like you said, like you're doing your music every day, you want to do your health and wellness every day, and it should just become, and it needs to be enjoyable. Like you're not going to do something every day that you don't like, because
Yeah.
that's no fun. Like why? So find the stuff that you really enjoy and find the things that you're willing to try. Like I was willing to try weightlifting. I was usually kind of, like joke around, say I was a cardio girl, loved my cardio, but and weights kind of intimidated me. But now I'm 53 now, and I absolutely love lifting weights. I'm
Mhm.
stronger than I've ever been. And like, that's now my happy place when I'm out in our little home gym and I'm pumping iron now. So it's really kind of interesting when you break through the, let me try it and see where I find my joy.
I think some people right, got into a trap of like trying to satisfy the things that other people like to do.
Yes.
You sometimes people kind of get subordinated to whatever like their group is doing or their best friend is doing or their spouse is doing, and then they feel like, well, I gotta do that because that's what they like, and
Yeah.
then there's sometimes there's like a miscommunication or not enough communication to actually express that, well, I would love to do that, but I'm not really into it. It doesn't really work for me. And some people find that a hard thing to say, because they don't want to be the person saying no. But sometimes for your own self, you have to know what you can do and what you can't do, you know.
Absolutely. And I know it's like my husband still went out and mountain biked, but, and, this time we would like to spend together, but I also want him to find his joy and I wanted to find my joy. So it's important. And I love that you brought that up because that is really a really big point. And that's where some people really get in trouble and they find they stop doing the things because maybe it's an impression from someone else or it's the other their certain friends or spouse or whatever isn't doing it with them. You definitely need to have, especially for many things in life, you time and the things that you truly enjoy. And of course it's a balance. You can't completely diss your friends and your spouse all the time, but that you do need to find those little pockets of things. That I call it always the mom guilt, because raising kids and working, it's always, I found time. I was a better mother when I would find time to work
For
out
yourself.
and take care of myself. And
Now, yeah,
oh, I will just say one thing on that one too. Consequently, what's happened with that, especially because we both do workout, we both do that. Our kids join us on these obstacle courses now. So like
that's cool.
we planted that seed in them, and now we do these, and it's fun. It's a fun
It's
family
a
event.
family thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a family event. And one thing I was looking at, one of the questions you like to answer is, why is it important to be curious about your health? And so some people, like I remember my father was like, would never like check out anything about his health on his own. He'd only listen to whatever the doctor told him. He never tried to like, he needs, sometimes he would do this thing where, well, if the doctor doesn't find it, I'm not going to tell him. Well,
Mm,
like I told my dad, like, well, you got to tell the doctor what you're feeling because he's not going to magically know it. He said, well, he's a doctor. He should. I said, well, my dad was kind of old school. Like,
yeah.
no, that's not really how it works. And my mom used to get so upset because, like, he would be like, not say hardly anything because he just like, well, the doctor's supposed to be able to find it. I'm like, really? It's like you have to tell them some things about how you're feeling so they can track it down. So I think maybe being curious is like you have to be willing to, and maybe there's fear there because maybe you don't want to explore like why you're feeling something or something doesn't feel quite right and you don't want to say it. So you wait for the doctor to go find it on a test. It's like that's probably not the best thing to do.
No, no, that's definitely not the best thing to do. No, there's really lots with that. So I told you that my husband had brain surgery in 14 and removed this pineal gland cystic mass from the middle of his brain. And the reason why we got to that point was because he told me one night, finally in early 2013, that he was seeing double and he couldn't drive. And I was like, okay, that's not normal. That's just not normal. And he was like, oh, well, that's, he's a Marine. Like his bone will be sticking out of his
And suck it up.
body, blood squirting everywhere. He's like, I'll just wrap it. I'm good. No problem. But I'm like, no,
Yeah.
that's not good, honey. Anyway, long the short, it took me a year for him to finally go through. And we had a few doctors that we went through, and I kept pushing him. I'm like, no, you need to like find something. You need to figure this out. Well, we found out it was that cystic mass. Well, that's not the end of the story, though. His double vision never really fully went away. And when we moved down to the Texas area, the Dallas area in 2019, I was like, you know what? Let's see if we can find another doctor that will help us here. And he's kind of like, no, 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 I'm fine. But his glasses were getting thicker and thicker and thicker, and his headache was hurting him, and there's just a lot there. So sometimes you have to push for your spouse, and sometimes you have to push
Mhm.
for yourself. It's good to have that. But what we found out was by me being annoying, like I can be with him, we found another doctor that we found the true root cause. Now, the cyst was causing problems. It was putting pressure on his fourth
Okay.
optic nerve. But it
Oh,
turns out he has a rare autoimmune. neuromuscular autoimmune issue called Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome, which basically, if it takes some time for his muscles to fire up. So by going through the process and still being curious and also questioning, like, something's not right. Like, you shouldn't still be having double vision, or you shouldn't still be
Mhm.
feeling this way. Something's not right. You have to be your own health advocate these days. You have to, like you said, like your mom said, and you said to your dad, you have to speak up. You have to say, okay, this isn't good. Like, I've got to be looking at this a little bit further. And you've got to, I mean, I got to the point where the initial calls with the doctor, because a lot of people will say, well, you have to get a referral from your primary or whatever. I basically
Mhm.
got to the point where I called the doctors where I wanted to go. And I said, listen, I'm a cash paying client. They will take you if you are a cash paying client and you,
Yeah.
without
uh,
the referral.
Yeah.
So do that. Like, if you've got something and you know you found an expert to help you, do the cash pay. It's, I mean, even though it may be a little bit more and you can go backtrack with your health, we did that as with our health insurance, we did that as well. But it's, if you know it and you found the expert, push for yourself. You have to be your own advocate, because it's not that these doctors don't care, it's that they have too much, they have got too many
Yeah.
people, too many things going on. And like like your mom was saying, you were saying to your father, they can't interpret like how you're feeling. You have to tell them how
Yeah.
you're feeling. You have to tell them what's
Yeah.
going on.
Test. Yeah, my dad was making a mistake that blood test and, test certain tests were just gonna figure out everything. But you have to explain, like, if you're having a headache, if you don't tell me you're having a headache, or you don't tell me you have double vision, or you don't tell them they're feeling faint, they're not gonna get that from the blood work if you don't
No,
tell them what's going on, like,
right.
yeah, I mean, with my cancer on my back, I felt like there was something going on with my I didn't feel right, and then, I didn't even notice I had it on my back at first, and so,
Right.
somebody noticed it, but I went to the doctor, and they initially thought it was a cyst. I got a second opinion, and then they found out I was actually cancerous. So this was important to sometimes get second opinions, because the first doctor, and I said, "What's the risk of going in there if it's a cancer instead of a cyst?" Right? So
Mm.
first doctor was just, "Oh, I'm just gonna go in without fully understanding what it could be." And I got a second doctor that was, like, more informed and actually could do some tests to see what it was, and found out it was a level 3 sarcoma. I had to do a wider operation than just a cyst operation, and put me immediately into radiation therapy. So if I had gone with the first one, there would have been mistakes. It's like sometimes you have to get, like, multiple opinions just to
Mhm.
get the right picture of what's going on, and do the research. And I had to start reading when I was 27. What is this? And what is this
Right.
level 3 sarcoma? How did I get it? Like, be curious about what you're. Don't just take what the doctor tells you. Actually, go look it up.
Oh,
Go
yeah.
read about it. Go find out what the options are, and then figure out if they make sense to you, and start to. You have to do some work, but
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
not easy.
Well, but it's so much easier now, though. I mean, if you think about it, because we're both in our 50s, if we go back to our into
Yeah,
the late 90s, we didn't have the resource of the internet that we have now. Like, you really did. And
yeah,
if you to your and I've got, my dad is 85, and my father-in-law is 83. They, they're still of that old kind of, I don't want to say old school, but it kind of is. They didn't have the access that we have now
yeah.
to
They wouldn't
information.
even look it up. Yeah, they wouldn't
Right.
even want to look it up.
Yeah, they didn't want to
you
look at
know?
me, and there's a big part of it too, is when you're going through that. And I remember I had this little short stint of selling life insurance at one point in time, and I remember sitting down with a young couple, and she was a stay-at-home mom, and her husband was like, "Yes, honey, we need to buy this insurance. We need to buy it," and she was just absolutely set about not doing it. And we kind of find out, after sitting there talking with her for a while, was she was so fearful of doing the medical examination because she didn't want to know if something was wrong.
Or
And
find something.
or find something. And that was,
Yeah, so that's a big problem.
that that's a whole nother psychological issue as well. And it's in, obviously we can't unpack that one completely here today, but it is really important to know and monitor your health. And if something this little thing called your gut is really very intuitive. If something is just not right, if you don't think you've got the right answer, do your research, look it up, do kind of ask people, and there's just so much information now.
Oh
To
yeah.
that point, there might be too much information and you might go down a
Too
rabbit
much.
hole that it
Yeah.
really isn't. But
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of just walk through it, and just be, if you know in your heart and you know in your gut something's wrong, keep looking to figure to kind of eliminate options.
Well, I like to look at everything. So like I looked at holistic medicine, but I also, had a a radiologist, and I had like a doctor was looking at chemo, and I didn't like say, "Oh, I'm not going to do that at all." I think sometimes you have to look at all the options and look at what you actually have. With a level 3 sarcoma, I had an option where I could have done something with chemo, but they wanted to put me in a research study, and there was a 50-50 chance they gave me a placebo. And I'm saying, well, I got a level
Oh,
3. If you put me
yeah,
into a
no.
research study and this is a placebo, then you're not doing anything. And I immediately looked at the logic of that. It's like, then I'm doing this treatment for how many weeks? And I got a level 3 that could go to a 4, and I'm not actually doing anything to stop it. I'm like, that didn't make a lot of sense to me. So I didn't go with that.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I don't think I would go with that either. That's
No,
interesting.
it's
They
just
would
like
do
you had
that.
to think the logic. You
Yeah.
you could see somebody could get pushed into that if they don't think about
Yes.
it, right? If they don't
Yeah.
do the research and they just assume, "Oh, I won't get the placebo." Like, if you just have this blue sky point of view, it's like, my immediate thing is like, "Well, I'm gonna get that. They're probably gonna give me the placebo." So I immediately thought they're like, "Well, I don't know. It's 50-50. I get one the real medicine or the placebo." So I'm like, I don't have a guarantee I'm actually getting well. So I think you do have to be curious. You have to ask questions. You have to think about things that maybe are unpleasant. And I think that's the
Yes.
problem with like taking ownership of your health is there's things about your health that people don't want to hear. Like you said, there's some things that people don't want to know because it
Yeah.
scares them. It's a fear factor again. And
Yeah,
so,
it is.
like, how do you get to a point where you have like no regrets in life, but you have to check things out? You can't have, you have to make sure that you're actually looking at everything that's actually happening and not hiding it. I think some people want to just like throw things under the rug that you really can't.
No, you really can't. When it comes to your health, like, you have to be curious. You have to be your own health advocate, and you've got to just, I just take care of yourself. You are so important. You are so worth it, and your life is worth it. So it's, I don't know. It breaks my heart when I see people who don't, and there's something of a fear or holding them back, or something that's preventing them from really truly being their own, taking their life as importantly as I would love to see them take it.
But I think it goes back to like no regrets. If you don't take chances or you don't look at everything that's out there, you don't look at all the options, then you didn't check it out. Then you're gonna like have a regret that you didn't do everything that you could, right?
Right.
That you were kind of. And to me, it's like why did I go to Japan? I had people telling me, "Oh, you shouldn't go there. They could have an earthquake. You could do this. They don't like people. They're like very and not they'll call you a gaijin or whatever." And I'm like, you know, I was like, I want to see what I can learn from the East. I want to
Oh,
know.
yeah.
And I was there for like 2 years with my
Oh, that's
family.
wonderful.
And it was my daughter went to a Japanese school. Japanese kindergarten, and a preschool and a kindergarten. And she even to this day, she has a Shinto, aspect to her art. She's an artist, and everything she learned from those days is like in her embedded in the art that she does, and people find it really it's like, how come she has this Eastern perspective? Well, because she grew up unlike American kid, like her preschool and kindergarten was in Japan. So
Oh,
she
wow.
got a totally different point of view very early compared to somebody from the West. And it's just
That's
amazing
neat.
when I look at her art, it's like, wow, it really it has Western aspects too, but now it's like a combination of East and West, which is really cool.
That is really cool. And that it just you can't, you can't y those types of, uh, influences are just so priceless, especially at such a young age. And again, it's kind of, why not? Why wouldn't you? Would If you woke up or sitting on your rocking chair later on in the years, would you sit there and go, "Gosh, I really wish I had gone to Japan"? Now you won't have that. Instead, you can talk
Yeah.
about the memories that you have.
Yeah, I mean, it's because the people had told me, they came from a fear point of view. My parents
Mhm.
like, "Oh, there's an earthquake. You could die in a massive earthquake." Like, well, that could happen in San Francisco. That could happen in Mexico. Like, whatever. Like you don't know. Like I'm not gonna go there. I'm gonna go. And then the Fukushima thing happened. It's like, well, we weren't there. But it's like then my mom was like, "See, something could happen." It's like, well, we're not there anymore.
We're not
But
there
yeah,
anymore.
but it's like when she was like she wanted to be right, so she had to tell me she was right. But I was like, okay.
Well, it's amazing too. And it is sometimes you have to take a step back and be like, are they really trying to take care of me? Or is it their fear, their imprinting on you? And then
Mhm.
see, really pull yourself back from that so that it doesn't imprint and that you do what you are set or called or want to do going forward.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting, why people come to, authors, they come to people who are, coaches and they are advisors, is I think they get to a point where they've been maybe doing something and they couldn't do it, right? They're not expert at it. They come to realize that they don't have the expertise. So, that's when start reaching out. I think a lot of times when I've talked to, people in this kind of space, that people have kind of, oh, like they felt the need to like, well, I do need to try something different because it's not working.
Yeah. That's building that awareness and understanding what's going on in your life and where you are and what you've tried, and really marrying all of those pieces together to find the thing that's really going to help you stick to whatever plan you've got going forward or you want to go forward with.
So, how to like when people come to you, they come in like already knowing, um, kind of where they're at, or do you have to kind of I don't know, it's maybe different with every client, but like what's like the kind of common situation when somebody comes to you for your advice?
So when we're going through the designing your strategic wellness plan, the first process we go through is that clarity process. We really got to get clear about where you're going, where you want to go. What does that vision of wellness, that vision of your life look like going forward? And it's a little more detailed than, I mean, vision boards are fantastic, but they are great wish boards. I really want to get my clients to that point where they just have this visceral feeling of this is really what I want and what I really want to see my life. Because you've got to connect with that deep down in order to be able to stick with whatever it is you decide is going to be your 90-day goal once we're done with the 8-week session. So that's the first part of it. And then the next part, we work on building awareness of where we are in 3 of the foundational areas, which is your nutrition, your movement, and your stress. Because those are the foundations of your health. And
Hmm.
we've got to get really clear. You've got to get really clear on where you're at with those. And that leads us to the planning process part of it, where we pick the one that's the most important to you and the one that percolates up, that we say you're ready. You can identify, okay, I'm really truly ready to move on this product or this part of it. And then we find whatever tools you need through that whole planning process so you can hit your 90-day goal running.
Well, I think I hope people will actually click the link that's going to be the URL that we're showing right now. That's clickable, and they'll be able to book that with you. And again, I'll give it over the audio, but you can't click on it now. But it's www.kellymajdan.com /book -2 -o, and that will be fully clickable when we're published. And again, maybe before we leave, you can tell people like what happens if they click on that link specifically.
So that takes you to the book page where, again, you'll get an overview of what Lessons from the Obstacle Course, 5 Strategies to Conquer the Muddy Fields of Life, is all about. And there'll be a couple links there to Amazon as well as Barnes and Noble that if you'd like to go and purchase the book. And then below that is the link to download the workbook guide, because in each one of the chapters, it's meant to be kind of a study book for learning how to overcome obstacles in those 5 areas: recovery, discovery, persistency,
Hmm.
creativity, and collaboration. And I've got questions and takeaways at the end of each chapter. So it's really meant for you to kind of take a step back and think about what you want to do or how this might help you overcome whatever obstacle we discussed in that chapter. So the workbook has an overview of some of those if you want to take that down, and then you can kind of write it out if you would like to as well too. So
I like a
that's a
journal.
part of it.
That's
Yes.
cool. That's awesome. I wish I had more time. I do have another podcast, but it would have been great talking to you. I wanted to thank you for being on the Family Electric Ghost podcast. Like I said at the beginning, we create a landing page for all the major platforms we're on. We're on most of the major podcast platforms, with video and audio. So we will give you that link plus the individual links if you choose to use them individually. But the landing page will have all the major places, and you'll have that by tomorrow.
Oh,
But
that's
thank you
wonderful.
again for being on the
Uh,
podcast, and have a great night.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed our time together. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night again.
Good night.